I'm Pat Halpin, and welcome to the special edition of Meet the Leaders. We're coming to you from the capital of the state of New York, Albany, and today is the opening session of the state legislature. We've been joined now with New York State Senator Zellnor Myrie. Senator, you literally this is your first day on this job.
That's exactly right.
You won an upset election last fall, but you come in with a wealth of experience. So I'm going to just cut right to the chase. What are your top priorities?
You know, I have the honor of being the chair of the Elections Committee, and so voting rights, access to the ballot, and campaign finance reform are really top of mind and something that I'd like to get focused on early.
When people think of New York State, we think we're a liberal, progressive state, but when it comes to voting rights, that's not the case.
It's not the case. And Pat, let me throw a couple of numbers at you. We're the only state in the union that doesn't have a consolidated state and federal primary. 37 others.
Which means that the federal primaries for president and Congress are held on the same day as the state primary.
That's exactly right. And so we don't have that. So we have two primaries. It's more money. It's more confusing to voters. 37 other states have early voting, 27 have no excuse absentee voting. So we're really at the bottom when it comes to access to the ballot. And I think that we have a responsibility to the people of New York to make it easier to participate in our government and not harder.
So when you talk about easier access, let's start with early voting. What should that look like?
I think early voting needs to provide at least 2 weekends and a couple of days for people to vote when they have time. You know, I think it is an unfortunate reality that there are folks who can't get to the ballot box on election day because they have work responsibilities, family responsibilities, and all sorts of other things. And so I think we need to give people the opportunity to vote when they have most time. I think that starts with early voting.
What about absentee ballots? Now, literally, if you sign an absentee ballot and say you're going to be out of state, but you're really in state, or for some reason you don't have what they describe as a legitimate excuse, right, and you ask for it, you're breaking the law.
That's exactly. We make it harder for you to vote by absentee if you have some other responsibilities. We are behind the rest of the country. 27 other states say, look, you don't have to have an excuse to vote by mail or to absentee vote. Just let us know that that's what's going to happen, and I think that opens up access to voting.
So there you see campaigns going out and say, hey, are you going to vote for our candidate? Let's file your absentee ballot so you don't have to worry about it. In New York State, you can't do that.
You cannot do that. You cannot do that. And, you know, really it's forcing people to lie, right? You know, if you are, and I went away for law school, and it was very difficult for me to vote by absentee just because of the distance. And I think that, you know, it puts people in weird situations where they are unnecessarily encumbered from participating in their democracy.
What about ease at which candidates can get on the ballot? That's another one of those things in New York State that if your petitions, everything on exactly, I mean, the courts have now intervened, mm-hmm, and you know they've said some of the standards were illegal, but it's still very difficult. Have you given any thought to talk about ballot access to candidates?
I think that's a conversation that we should have. I think that New York City a couple of years ago lowered the signature requirement for you to get on the ballot, and I think that has opened up the process. You know, one of the things that you learn while campaigning is you think that being a candidate is just giving speeches and shaking hands, but it really isn't that, right? And the first step is getting on the ballot. There are a lot of things that are put there to trip you up, and I think we should be making it easier for people to run and not harder.
And make it and people go to jail if they have fraudulent signatures or
right,
somehow they don't do it properly. What about this LLC loophole? I mean, New York State allows, you know, contributions of extraordinary amounts to be given to candidates. If you're running statewide, if you're running for local office, if you're running for the state legislature. There are not the types of limits on campaign donations that you see in other places. What are your thoughts about that in this so-called LLC loophole, which allows people to give more than one contribution if they have an LLC?
Right. You know, look, Here in New York, if you are an individual, you are capped at how much you can give, right? But if you open up 10 LLCs, we treat those LLCs differently. You can give an unlimited sum by creating an unlimited amount of LLCs. And that's the loophole that we need to close, because it has created a weapon for special interests to speak louder than individuals, right? And so we have certain industries that have been able to contribute to the political process in an unlimited way. And we don't know who they are, because the LLCs doesn't require for you to disclose who the owners are. And so I think it's a transparency issue. I think it's a way to get big money out of politics. And I think it's a way to open up the process.
Well, I just interviewed your counterpart in the state assembly, Assemblyman Chuck Levine, and it sounds like the two of you have the same song sheet. And what that means with you being in the majority is that there's a good chance it's going to happen.
No, I'm very excited to partner with Assemblyman Levine. You know, part of the what's humbling about this process is we as freshmen get to walk into a majority. And a lot of the things that the members in the assembly, a lot of the things that the advocates and the activists have been fighting for years, we have the opportunity to make happen. So I can't, I express my excitement enough to work with Assemblymember Levine so that we can get some of these reforms
and you're
done.
Not going to waste this opportunity.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Never waste it up. So let's talk about housing. You can't talk about housing and the lack of affordability in New York City in particular without talking about how to provide access to working families who are literally being priced out of neighborhoods that used to be reasonably affordable.
Look, I grew up in a rent-stabilized apartment. We have our rent regulation laws that are up for renewal this year. There's going to be a big fight around that. But I think we also need to include some of our middle-class homeowners, people who thought that they had a straight path to the American dream, but who have been priced out of their neighborhoods, and they haven't been receiving the same sort of incentives that big developers get. And so what you have, like in my district, in East Flatbush and in parts of Brownsville, you have people who have been there, who have made the community attractive, but who are now subject to fraud and who were hit hard by the 2008 financial crisis, and who are not getting the assistance from the government as they should. And so this is something that is very near and dear to me. I would love to own a home one day, but I don't know if there's a path for me right now in my very own district. And I think that we need to do something about that.
Let's talk about criminal justice reform. Look, it looks like marijuana is going to be made legal and a new industry is going to blossom. But part of that has to do with social justice, equity, and making sure that people who went to jail, went to prison for cannabis are dealt with in a very fair and equitable way now that it's legal. Your thoughts?
Pat, I think you hit it right on the head. The legalization of marijuana to me is a social justice issue. Right? There are folks that have been disproportionately affected by the criminalization of marijuana, and I think that those folks need to be the main beneficiaries of the legalization. So
and neighborhoods.
That's exactly
that have been crushed,
decimated by the criminalization of marijuana. Those people need to be the main beneficiaries. So I'm not talking about token licenses. I'm not talking about token outreach to the community. I'm talking about a real investment. If we are creating an entire industry, we need to make sure that we are doing it the right way and that we're including these communities in the profits.
It's going to be interesting. I saw a statistic, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed an incredible statistic, which is that when you look at people who are in prison, 81% are black and brown. 81%. I'm talking about for cannabis-related crimes.
It is a disgrace.
Yeah, and when you think about it, think about the impact of the ripple effect throughout those communities when somebody in that family is now in prison and actually will be getting out. What responsibility do we have to them to help them transition into becoming productive citizens?
No, I mean, it is a huge stain on our government that we have allowed this to occur. I think that we have, as you mentioned, this ripple effect, right? We have both black people and white people use marijuana at the same usage rates, right? But we've been over-criminalized for this. And so the folks who are coming out of prison who are trying to get back on the right foot, when we talk about the legalization of marijuana, there needs to be a special focus on this group. You know, the truth is that everyone wants to work, everyone wants to provide for their family, everyone wants to be a part of their community. I think that the legalization of marijuana allows for these folks that are just re-entering to do that.
And people who are part of the underground economy or the illegal economy, however you want to describe it, can work their way into the legal economy and be able to sleep at night.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Senator, it sounds like it's going to be very exciting. I wish you the best.
Thank you so much for having me.
If all you do is criminal justice reform, and I say
Right.
housing and election reform, you can take the rest of the year
Exactly.
off.
I think we've had a good year if we get those done.
But you've got a lot of work to do.
Yes, that's right.
You're obviously excited to do it.
Thank you so much.
It's a
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thanks for watching this edition of Meet the Leaders. I'm Pat Halpin. We'll see you next time.